Good morning. How are you doing? How are things over there?
Good morning. I'm fine, thank you. Everything is hunky dory. How are you?
Good. Are you having spring yet?
Intermittently, we got bulbs out, which is nice.
Okay.
But today is gray and miserable. Tomorrow's meant to be very nice, which is
Okay.
good. It's as
I
I'm
hope
going to be
tomorrow
getting
is
my
nice.
vaccine tomorrow. So,
Oh, fantastic. Oh, well done.
well,
Good for
well,
you.
injection number one. Yes, thank you.
Oh, that's awesome.
So,
I'm still
if
on the
you
wait
never
list.
hear from me again, then you know that all the conspiracies are true.
Well, I mean, do you have someone to check on you? I mean, I'll check on you, but do you have someone nearby? Because not because there's anything to worry about. It's just that some people have reactions and they can
Yes.
feel pretty rubbish, for a little bit. And
Hmm.
so if you need anything, do you have your like the sober driver? What do you call it? Like the the person who's going to be
I do, but the
capable.
problem is all my neighbors they're very kind, but they're all geriatric. So,
Oh, I see. Right.
um,
So if you
but
fell on
I'm
the
sure I
stairs, they
could.
won't be able to pick you up.
I mean, no, no, but they'd all stand around and be full of advice and help, and they're very, very nice. I
Well,
mean,
that's good.
I have two of them who cook me meals, which is very embarrassing,
Oh, that's sweet.
but it's very
So
sweet.
what are they like? Who are the ones that cook you meals?
Oh, they're lovely. They're a fantastic gay couple. He worked in politics. One of them works in politics. The other one is Spanish, and so he just cooks these amazing Spanish meals, and
Oh,
they
nice. So
claim they
you
make too
get
much, and so I get every now and then
authentic.
spectacular. Yes, it's
Do they do
brilliant, and
paella? Because that's pretty hard
they
work.
do paella.
Oh,
Yes,
nice.
in fact, the last meal was a paella, so
Oh
it's lovely.
God. Okay, so you've got it sorted. You're
I
doing all
do,
right.
and I feel very guilty, but I do. I take them papers every day, um, uh, and I send them. Well, I've been told not to anymore because they're putting on too much weight, but I give them chocolate to say thank you afterwards. Anyway,
Okay.
long story short,
Yeah.
it's going to be fine. Thank you.
Well, good. I mean, over here, spring has sprung, so
Good.
that's pleasant. I
Great.
haven't had my vaccine. They don't know when it will be my turn, but I keep trying. Although I'm not far away from a really huge vaccination center, so friends
Oh,
of mine have advised us to go there at the end of the day and say, "Hey, you got anything left over?" Because there are
okay.
no shows and stuff like that. So I'll
Sure.
I'll try.
Okay.
So the first thing I thought maybe, we're before we kind of launch into it, maybe we'll just talk about things that have occurred. I'm going to share my screen with you just so that you can see what I'm doing. Although you can see it, yes, you've got Miro working, right? So you can watch what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So let me just make sure that we're broadcasting that so everyone can see what we're seeing. Great. Okay. So first off, I just thought just to get in the mood, maybe just kind of talk about anything that's happened topically in the news or anything that was worth chatting about. I mean, I thought I'll start us off. I guess
Okay.
the first thing that I was kind of surprised about was this sort of this Amazon versus union thing, um, which
Oh, I don't know
I
that.
thought, well, it's that there are. It may not surprise you to hear that Amazon often puts its warehouse in low wage, kind of depressed urban areas where
Weird.
it then offers people a little bit more than minimum wage and then says, oh, and now you belong to us. We can do anything we want, kind of thing.
Right.
So there are a few places where workers have been trying to unionize. And Amazon has behaved very strangely in this regard. They've hired lots of consultants to try to influence people to stop unionizing, but I think they've gone so far as to try to scare people into saying, look, if you do this, we're going to pull the warehouse out and everyone will lose their jobs.
Yes.
And it just strikes me as a bit kind of 19th century. I thought we had gotten past all of that, but clearly not. So that
But isn't it
was,
all quite 19th century at the moment? I mean, these are all, they may be high tech, but they're robber barons. It's the same thing.
yeah, I think you're right.
Sorry,
I
if I
think we
kept
are,
purring as it attacks the mic. Sorry.
it sounded
But
good though. I liked
that's
it.
exactly what we're seeing is these people like the robber barons who basically took up every single step of the process. These people are doing exactly the same thing.
And the
From
only
making the
difference though,
computers, making the chips, making the computers, everything else. They just want to get hold of the cables, which Google's already been doing.
more chips and cables. I would say the one difference though is that even if they did live in large mansions and whatnot. They did live on planet Earth. I mean, these guys are hoping to skip the planet once
Yeah.
they've ruined it. So they're robin barons with wings. But yeah,
Yes.
you're right. It is funny how the more things change, the more they stay the same. And sometimes when I think about, this question of will this ever end? When will this be resolved? I was reminded recently that in European history, it wasn't like we had a few revolutions and sorted things out. These revolutions occurred sort of on 4 or 5 year, reruns over and over and over again until finally the monarchy was removed or neutered, and the aristocracy was brought down to size for a while. So, or there were wars that kind of neutralized and sort of stabilize inequalities and things. So it seems like we just don't like to kind of be proactive about it. We just wait until things get really terrible and either war or revolution happens. So
Mm-hmm.
I hope that isn't the story again, but history tells us it is.
It
And
is.
it seems like we're watching it, aren't we, kind of in our lifetime play out all over again. So that was
Yes,
my
definitely.
observation. And you're right, robber barons. And we had fun with our storyline about the HELP organization, where
Yes.
they're catastrophicists that create problems in the world that they then try to
Profit off.
profit from. So that I thought that was
But
very good.
also the planet Amazon, planet Disney,
Mm,
where does the ambition and greed of corporate entities stop?
hmm
And the answer is it doesn't,
Yeah.
unless you can bring them to heel in some way.
This reminds me
They're
of branding disaster. Um, that's actually relevant to what we'll see in a moment, but I'm just going to bring this up for a moment. I saw some photo. There was some memes going around where people were taking the Nike Just Do It swoosh and they were putting it into old artworks and kind of creating branding around it, and they were very funny. But whoops, I put this the wrong way around. There's my dyslexia rearing its faceful ugliness. Disaster branding. We've heard of disaster capitalism, but this probably goes together with that, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. What have you kind of come across in the news, or anything that's surprised you, or not, as the case may be?
um, that's a really good question. Um,
Nothing
what have I
interesting has
come
happened.
across in the
My
news?
life is.
No, I'm sure there's stuff that absolutely infuriates me, particularly going on here, but I don't know of how much incest it is. That's just a stunningly inept government that has one of the highest, if not the highest, death toll in the world, that is still squandering any opportunities it has and not thinking ahead. The one thing they've done, and it was very interesting, is, and I talked about this before. I'm sorry, is they actually I know what we can talk about, but they've done successfully is the one thing they needed to throw money at, which was the vaccine, and they did that.
Hmm.
So throwing money at something they can do. Anything else, no.
I wonder if it's just in general that people don't like to tackle long-term, big plan items and take ownership of those things. And I mean, I see that politicians are supposed to be people that negotiate with different kind of parties and interests within their own constituencies, and come up with solutions, hopefully even lead people forwards and not just play to the crowd all the time, but take that on board, make people feel like they've had an input and lead everybody somewhere. And
Mm,
I think that instead they spend a lot of time sort of obfuscating or finding scapegoats or doing things to distract us from really what we need to do. And I often feel that really we don't have a gazillion problems in society. They can be boiled down to something you can count on one or two hands at most. But there's a lot of distractions. Look at this thing. Look at that thing. Isn't this
mm,
horrible? Isn't that horrible? It wasn't me. It was her, or whatever. and it distracts us from what we need to be doing, which is very, very unfortunate. But hopefully we can help, right? You and I are going to solve all these problems today. We're going to look at disaster branding, perhaps, and I'm going to reveal number one, and that's sort of what I was thinking about, I suppose, when I assembled these lovely images. Now, it's not the first time that we've kind of played around with pandemic fashion, but I liked the first one on the left. I thought that was great. It just made me smile, as horrible as it is. And so I'm thinking of disaster branding as something that
Right.
goes alongside disaster capitalism. It's like, this moment brought to you by Monsanto. This was it really?
This famine brought to you by Monsanto. Yes.
Yeah, this famine. Yes, and how? What I mean, branding has always been, considered something of value, right? When you purchase a company, there's a goodwill component, which is sort of a financial line item for all the goodwill that this company has built up over the years, and we've paid the premium for it, right? I wonder going forward how much goodwill there will be in these future mergers and acquisitions. It'll be kind of squeezed to zero, or given what we were talking about, our disaster capitalists, will goodwill now be, how much destruction it's wrought and gotten over by, purchasing politicians or something. That will be very valuable. The lobbying, Goodwill Lobbying, I'll put as a as a line item. Also, I don't know if anything strikes you about this, other than we're all very wrapped up, and I love this. The third one from the left, where it's, or even the fourth one too. It's this you're wearing another skin, like
Yes.
like the atmosphere is too horrible for your own existing skin. So, I wonder what that would be called. Would that be called? What would you call this product? A new skin, new you.
Mm.
So rather than buying, kind of like exfoliation creams and things, you can just
Right. You're actually
put
putting
on
additional layers on.
put on a skin leotard.
Mm. Dermatard.
Oh yeah, that's
Yes.
great. Dermatard. Dermatard. God, I don't know. Is that how I spell it? But it's great. So that is the
It's fun.
dermatard. Yeah, the beauty. What are the beauty regimens of the future? What will they look like?
Gosh.
I mean, right now, what's a new kind of trend? It's not new, but there's a lot of amateur makeup artists and things on YouTube
Mm.
that show you how to do different makeups or contour, or whatever it
Mm-hmm.
may be, and they've become rock stars, right? Some
Yes.
of them earning a great deal of money from product placement or advertising and whatnot. And so I suppose you get up in the morning and you watch your YouTuber for advice. I've also noticed that there are businesses out there that that do AI tracking to add makeup to your face on social media.
Oh.
And so the idea is that you get out of bed and you've got a call and you don't have time to put makeup on,
Mm.
and so you just have these filters that you've pre-designed, and they might have been sponsored by cosmetic companies, whatever, with the colors and the shades that you like, and they pop it
Mm-hmm.
on your face. And what they do is they try not to use it as a filter in your application, but a separate application, so that even if you have a glitch with your
Mm.
video meeting program, it won't reveal that you're using a filter. So you'll look like you have put makeup on, and you can move your face around and it will track you and all that. So these are, I guess, augmented reality makeup, right? I guess that's what it is. So augmented reality makeup. And I suppose we could kindly, if people were wearing kind of AR glasses, we could just beam to the glasses what they should be seeing, not what they're looking at. So maybe
Right.
that's
So it's
something that.
making yourself into an avatar of yourself.
Hmm. Yeah, and it doesn't have to be that crazy. Whenever we watch science fiction movies, right? It's always the avatar is just really wacky and out there, but it could just be subtle.
Yeah,
Change
a
your
better version of
gender,
you, the you that you
something.
wished you looked like.
Yeah. What would I do if I wanted a better version of me? I guess I hate to pick that apart because when people, I mean, if you spent the afternoon with a plastic surgeon, they'd probably, give you lots of advice, and then you'd walk away feeling like, oh dear, I really have a lot to do,
Exactly.
right? So you might have to pick your friends carefully because I don't, I don't really want to kind of go down that rabbit hole. And it's kind of nice to look at yourself in the mirror and think, yes, that's nice, isn't it? Because looking at yourself in the mirror and thinking of all the problems and all the things you want to fix is a pretty bad way to start the day. So I don't want to
Mm.
upend my reality too much. But mirror, mirror on the wall. Um, I suppose that's another augmented reality, right? Is to have the mirror show me only what I want to see,
Mm.
show me my best light,
Mm-hmm.
and I suppose in the fairy tale, the queen, right? Oh, not the queen, whatever her name was, the witch who spoke to the mirror. That's terrible. I can't remember what is that fairy tale. Is that
That's
Snow
Snow
White or
White.
something?
Snow White.
Okay, so she's talking to the mirror and asking it who's the fairest in the land and all this sort of stuff.
Mm.
And we don't talk to our mirrors yet, do we? We talk to Alexa and we talk to the Google Pebble and things like this. But they really should put it in the mirror, don't you think? Because that's
Yeah,
where people are wanting to spend more time talking to themselves, maybe.
that's a tremendously scary prospect. Yes.
So it could be the Alexa mirror. Do you wonder why they're always female assistants in these virtual assistants? I mean, is that kind of a sexist thing, or what is it? Do you think?
Yes.
I mean, do we? Yeah, I never really thought about it before.
I mean, you can
But
change the voice, can't you, to
okay.
be not a woman, but I think you're still calling it Siri.
Well, I noticed that Siri and Alexa both have the same sense of humor. It's sort of this kind of deadpan,
Hmm.
um, playful at times, but most often kind of sighing, like you've made a dad joke.
Right.
Uh, it's that kind of person.
That's
It's like
interesting.
they have the
That's
same
very interesting.
personality. I kind of wonder where is this because the AI behind it's kind of the same? It's like this is what computers are going to listen to us and just go, okay,
Or is that
you know,
American humor?
yeah, okay. So I'm going to think of AI humor. In fact, this could teach us a lot about our own humor, which is in itself a fascinating subject, I think,
And
because
that was
cultural
actually
humor.
the new subtopic I was going to bring up today was the return of Frasier after 20 years.
Okay, so what have you learned with the return of Frasier? This is the
Yeah, well,
same
it's
show being
nostalgia. It's the
replayed.
weaponizing of nostalgia again.
Oh, I
It's
love that word.
because Paramount wants to launch its own channel, and they're looking desperately at their back catalog and going, right. CBS All Access has done it with Star Trek. They've now got, well, at the moment they've got two Star Trek shows, but they're about to have one, two, three more. So they're going to have five Star Trek shows.
Hmm.
Um, that is driving subscriptions to CBS All Access because people don't want to watch anything else that's not ever on CBS.
Hmm.
And so Paramount's been looking for
Sadly,
exactly the same thing that it has, and all it has apparently is Frasier.
wow.
So
Well,
they're
I heard the
bringing back.
same. I heard the same story of Friends, right? Didn't it just get taken
Well, so
off of
they're doing, yeah, and they're doing
Netflix
a
or something?
one.
And
They're doing, yes, exactly, because it was
and it was a
Netflix's
huge,
number.
a huge generator of
Netflix's,
all of
yeah,
views for them, right?
yeah, it
So
was.
good.
It was a huge generator for Netflix. Um, and so now we got Sex and the City coming back, so HBO can relaunch itself. But I can't. Are people desperate for 20 years ago? I guess they are.
Well,
Are they just
uh,
desperate for not now?
it just makes me think of that all important great make TV great again. I think weaponizing nostalgia. You're absolutely right. There's something going on, and perhaps this is part of Neil Howe. I think it is Neil Howe or Hume. Neil Howe, maybe the fourth turning, which I'll bring up again, which is this idea that there are, that every kind of 4 generations there's this shift that occurs that is like a grand reset, and so maybe we're in that kind of conflagration because it's only boomers and Gen Xers that are probably really driving this nostalgia, because Gen Z has no interest in any of the stuff that we grew up on. I'm always amazed at how disinterested Gen Z is in the past. I'll bring up stuff and they're like, "Oh, that's so boring." In fact, I don't know. I have not. And this is not to say they don't exist, but okay, granted, I don't know a gazillion Gen Zers, but
Okay.
I have not yet, to this day, met a Gen Z person who loves and watches lots of scripted entertainment, with the exception maybe of some animation stuff, some of the kind of more hardcore, cutting edge animation. For the most part, they're watching YouTube stuff, they're playing video games, they're on Twitch, they're looking at reality TV. In fact, reality TV seems to be making a comeback with lots of Gen Zs. So they have no nostalgia for anything. All they've ever known is pandemic, war, terminal war, all this kind of stuff, right? There's no nostalgia there. So nostalgia is coming from our generation and above. And isn't that interesting? There's such a big split. So weaponizing nostalgia, boy, okay. So I don't know. I don't know what we create story-wise from this, but I do think that disaster.
Well, okay. So here's the thing:
and Dermatards are wonderful.
But are people going to be nostalgic? I think we've mentioned this before, but perhaps it's worth pursuing again. Will people be nostalgic for COVID?
Oh boy! All right, you're absolutely right. It'll be like the war. You know how people say to you, "Oh, wartime was so wonderful. People were so close,
pulled everyone
and
together."
Yeah, exactly. And we forgot about our stupid personal problems, and we drank ourselves into oblivion, and we had sex with our neighbors, and it was just like anything could happen. Nostalgic for COVID. Oh God, will you be nostalgic for COVID? I guess I will
costume parties where you wear a mask. It's going to come back, right?
Yeah, I will be nostalgic for going to work in my underwear, in my pajamas, I should say. Actually,
yes,
that was kind of nice.
No, there's a lot.
It's not over yet, mate. It's not over yet. So we've got more goodness to look forward to, and we have new variants thanks to you in the UK.
Yeah.
We've got a new one, and South Africa and Brazil.
As we keep pointing out, the South African one is worse than our UK variant. So there you go. Well, it's okay. We have a bad variant. Theirs is worse.
I mean, the thing about the variants, I mean, it should be worrying, but I think really what we have to bear in mind is that, these viruses, for them to succeed, they don't, they shouldn't kill people, but they should over time become extremely good at evading vaccinations and mutating their way through to just kind of, like the influenza, remain this constant presence in our lives that make us miserable. The outcomes, however, of this coronavirus is worse than influenza. So, we'll have to see what happens. But yeah, I think living with the virus is in fact, this kind of makes me think of, when you say nostalgia for COVID, I think of living with the virus. I have to think of Cronenberg, because a lot of his films are about, people living with pathogens of some kind, either, literally or other human beings that are like pathogens. But in an interview about his work, he said that he was really interested in people receiving some kind of disease, and then it becomes part of them and then changes them and they turn into something else. And it's almost like a chrysalis transformation. And I thought how wonderfully weird that idea is, but perhaps he would look upon COVID as a chrysalis transformation, and we should look at it in that way too, and be nostalgic for certain aspects of it, which is hard to do right now because, quite frankly, it's a little bit terrifying.
Yes.
All right, well, that was an interesting group of things. Let's see what happens here. What did I have here? Yeah, I think I wanted to put 3 things in a row, but jumble them up, not necessarily in the order in which they're now. So going 1, 2, 3, which one should I pick first here? 1, 2, or 3?
2.
Okay. So put 2 there. And then the next one, 1, 2, or 3?
3.
Okay. And then same for the next one. What should we do?
2.
Okay. And then I'll go 1 and 1 and 3. And then this pretty much leaves us with that set. All right. So we've jumbled them up. I haven't influenced your choices at all.
No, I've never met you before.
Yes. We've never done this before. All right. So we're going to have a peek at this one. So this one is Toxic.
Oh, that's off to a good start.
Toxic Stain.
Oh, that was my punk band.
And actually, that tattoo on the left could be like a toxic stain.
Yeah.
Toxic Stain. Spiritual journey ends badly. Okay. So what is that? What is that? How does that make us? What does that make us think of? Well, because it's so obvious.
Where you regress into some weird sludge.
Altered states. Okay.
Do you remember that movie?
Yes, I do. He spends a lot of time floating in those
floating around in a tank, and then he sort of turns into this thing.
Yeah, I never quite understood how he was able to turn into this primordial thing. That part. There's a lot of acid in this movie, and I guess the writers were also dropping a lot of acid as well.
Yes.
So, yeah, it's a bit like, I think if you watched Altered States, you should take 2001: Space Odyssey and Altered States, and watch 5 minutes of each. Keep interleaving, and then see what happens as you get closer to the end. Because I think
if you regress into something, yes, I think that might happen.
Altered States versus 2001. So Toxic Stain, spiritual journey ends badly. I mean, I'm going to be literal for a moment. Looking at the tattoo,
okay.
I was thinking about, because I was trying to find interesting tattoo body art for a discussion, but there's a lot of interesting stuff, a lot of silly stuff. But I was thinking about how, there are tattoos that are just at first just kind of pastoral. They're sort of on you, and they are what they are. And then the others that move with you and sort of have a life of their own as you move. And then I was sort of thinking, what about tattoos that do stuff? Like implants, or the pigments contain, DNA or certain information, or break in the case of emergency. I don't know. Something functional or utility, or maybe even warding off stuff. So now that I see Toxic Stain,
QR code.
Well, I mean, it could be something a little more advanced.
Why hasn't anyone done that? Why hasn't anyone done a QR code on their body that links to their website?
Right, so you can find out all about them.
Yeah.
Or it's a picture of them, so you can QR code from their face to a picture of their face. Yes. Well, this is again talking about branding. We started this off. This could be another form of quite literally branding, because you are branding yourself, but you're branding yourself with a logo or a moniker that you've created, but maybe somebody else wants to lay claim on you somehow. I mean, people do put swooshes and McDonald's arches and stuff on themselves. I saw one where someone took a macaroni product and did an entire kind of macaroni ad on their calf. And
What?
I thought, why would they want to craft
No, I don't know. Why?
I wonder. I hope someone was paying them for that brand advertising. Although I don't know if I want to look at that all the time. On their kind of
Good
very
Lord. Yeah.
sort of pale, pasty, flaccid calf. I want to be reminded of Kraft macaroni and cheese. Ugh. Okay. So toxic stain, spiritual journey ends badly. Well, I mean, that actually fits that photo quite well. Somebody seems to be going inside of themselves to the point where
Yeah.
they're fallen down an endless pit. So that makes me think of, let's see, someone goes on a bender and says, "Let me get a tattoo," and they go in, and then something that leads to some kind of adventure, an adventure that's a spiritual journey. Maybe there's something about the way the ink is alive. There is a famous Japanese film called Irezumi, which is tattoo. And if I remember correctly, I mean, it's a very intense kind of highly sexualized film, but I think the idea is that the woman who's getting this whole body tattoo is being transformed into the dragon or the character of the tattoo through the process, because the process is so painful and intimate and all the rest of it, right? So it's sort of how are you changed by the experience? It's a metamorphosis, I guess, quite literally, right? And I suppose I think about that because so many of the tattoos I saw, I mean, there were some really clever and beautiful ones, but those are rare. I mean, most of them were pretty naff and kind of jokey. And I just thought, why would you use your body as a joke? I mean, to use it as an art piece, yeah, I get that. But to sort of, I mean, think about how humor changes in your lifetime, where something you thought was really funny when you're 20 is not so funny maybe when you're 40.
Right.
A tattoo is going to be like really indelibly, reminding yourself of that fact. It's like past lovers or something, where do you really want to have that reminding you every time you look at it of something? So that's the spirit. Maybe the spiritual journey is it never ends. It's a toxic stain that lives with you forever. So it's the
Well, okay, but it's also
the tattoo curse.
Yeah, that's not bad. I mean, you could also get tattoos, I suppose, that would scramble facial recognition things.
Yeah, that's kind of fun. I was wondering about that. Yes, with surveillance and also video meetings, if you want to appear indiscriminate. Yeah, that's kind of fun. You could put on a face tattoo, or you could put on a dermatard, like a face tard, as we have above. That might be simpler, although perhaps a little sweaty.
I mean, there are those videos of snipers in Afghan snipers in Afghanistan covering themselves in tinfoil in order to shield their body temperature from night-sighted drones.
Oh, right. Oh, that's interesting. Oh. So,
So it does become about evading surveillance, about evading tracking.
I'm also when I was going off on that tangent about the ink being, something of utility. It reminded me of some government institution that I believe is in Mexico City or something, and they were having kind of break-in problems or people coming in without appointments, or I don't know what it was. There was a security issue of some kind, and so they wanted to embed something like a chip of some kind in the employees that would open doors without them having to have tangible cards or things that could be stolen or lost. And so they came up with this this sort of chip device that was the size of a rice kernel, that was in this sort of plastic capsule, not glass capsule or something that was very hard, which they can embed just under the skin somewhere on their body, and they wouldn't put it in the same place in every person. so that you could walk up the doors and open them. and and I know that we do this to pets and things like this, but and I think some people want to do it to their children. But anyway, um, can the tattoo also be uh, um, some way of gaining entrance to Valhalla or something? All right. Well, I'll put a pin in that because I think that's as far as we can go with that one for the moment.
Okay.
We've got haptic craving.
That was the name of my prog band in the 70s.
We've got great bands, Toxic Stain and
Haptic
Craving.
Haptic Craving is a great name for a band. Yep.
Haptic Craving Inheritance. How do those things go together? Well,
I mean, they go together with the COVID in the sense that people are so desperate for touch now. You have those haptic things that you can put between. Okay, here it is. So there are those things where you can tap out a message to your loved one on their phone or on their watch or whatever, and they'll feel that.
Yeah.
What if you could activate a thing like that from your tombstone that would activate to relatives who walk nearby?
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
So it would do that, or as you walk past a certain area, it triggers a recording you may have done about something important that happened to you in that area, and so they'll suddenly get your voice in their head overlaying, while I was here, this important thing happened that changed my life that you should know about.
That's
and
cool.
someone
That's a really
being
cool
desperate to get rid of
service.
that.
They've inherited.
Yeah, no, this is what it was burned in. This is part of the thing. You have to have this. And now they want to get rid of it because it's bad, or it's guilt, or it's this, or it's that, or they hated their parent and they've got to come to terms with it. And it's this voice that just won't leave them as a symbol for a very Ibsonian type symbol for literal inheritance.
It makes me think of I know we had the Sunshine of the Spotless Mind where they're erasing memory, but quite literally there is a medication that was used for some purpose, but people discovered that it removes what's in short-term memory, and that they can use it for therapy where a person can come in with a phobia of some kind. They can say, focus on that phobia. And focusing on the phobia brings in the short-term memory. Then they take this medication, and then the phobia is gone. And so they did it, for example, with someone who has phobia of spiders. And so, they see the spider, it freaks them out, all this and that. They take the pill. They come back an hour later or something, and the spider, they let it crawl on their hand. So it's like you're excising specific memory. And so I liked what you were suggesting about taking specific memory and saying, I'm going to put that in an urn or something. I'm going to bury that forever. And you make it into a kind of a commemoration. Like people gather around you and say, today I'm removing this cursed memory that I have been living with. It has done its job, and now I no longer wish to have it. And so I brought you all together to celebrate the excising of this memory. And after today, we will never talk about this again, kind of thing, because I won't remember it.
Gosh, is it? So it's kind of a oh boy,
it's sort of like a forgettance party.
Yeah, but it's almost as though it's a yes, but it's almost as though it's a it's a rite of passage. We're putting a rite of passage in for something that we don't have rite of passage for anymore. You have to overcome this thing, and this obstacle is now this parent who you must symbolically get rid of, confront.
I have, with people close to me, I've dealt with this issue of, them stopping themselves before they begin because they feel that they're not good enough, or they don't have the skills, or they, coming up with reasons why they will fail, let's say. And so that way of thinking is like a loop of kind of something that is preventing you from taking risk, which in itself is not a bad thing. You shouldn't go crazy and take ridiculous risks, but you do have to take a certain degree of risk in life to evolve and improve and whatnot. And so that way of thinking can really literally stop you from taking all risks, pretty much. And that's not very good either. So a rite of passage could be to say, all right, here's this behavioral aspect, and I'm going to now get rid of it so I can move on. But of course, in doing that, you sort of change yourself. And what is the outcome necessarily better? The rite of passage is celebrating the moving from one stage in life to another. And it'd be interesting if forgettance was part of that rite of passage. We talked about weaponizing nostalgia. Maybe we say, okay, now that you've come of age, you must forget all the things that you were attached to in your youth, because that's not helpful to our society now. We need to move on. Right. That's really interesting. I'm not sure what to do with that, but we have two things I'm kind of intrigued about. I'm intrigued about this rite of passage, Forgettance Party, but also this haptic craving, inheriting the haptic craving, receiving touch from the past is really interesting because we can receive audio, we can receive letters, other things, but to receive a cuddle from a deceased relative or something, I mean, how fascinating. What would that be? Haptic from the grave. I mean, it's really kind of never thought about touch as being a remote sensory but you're right.
No,
you
so
were using phones and things for it.
If they recorded their hugging, you could be hugged by your relative.
Or if you recorded making love with someone and they're gone, I mean, you can replay that. Boy, that is really yeah. There's
in fact, you could put a different person in that haptic suit, and that person would have to make love to you like your old partner did.
Oh, wow. Oh, my. Here, put this Dermatard on. I need to see you as my deceased.
But then, then you're into a thing, right? Because then that could record porn stars. That could record famous peoples.
So this goes in another direction. You can ask someone to wear the Dermatard, so in your augmented reality, they look like someone else when they're around you, because the Dermatard is like the golf ball green screen thing. It's like, removing. It's sort of. It also reminds them you are not yourself. You are whatever I project onto you. So don't actuate yourself. So it's a whole new kind of S&M.
I like that, but I think
situation, isn't it?
For that to work in a film, we need them
emotional
to still have
S&M.
We need them to still be wearing the ping pong balls, because that makes it funny.
Oh dear. So rite of passage. Let's imagine someone who's getting towards the end of their life, and a biographer comes with a host of equipment and says, we're going to capture you so that when you pass away, you can bequeath this to your generations afterwards. And it will include haptic components. It's not just your voice and your stories and your memories and things, but sort of the essence of you is your touch. God. Imagine, I think you brought up the whole gravesite thing. Imagine if you go to the gravesite and sort of feel the person that is interred there. Actually, this makes me think of my Facebook of the Dead concept from a long time ago.
Yes.
where you kind of, I thought of a funny product called Shrine, where you basically, while you're still alive, you create a shrine to yourself, and you put everything into there you want, and then after you pass away, you know how Facebook has these accounts that are still there for people that have passed away, and it's kind of creepy because they might have things that get sent out from those accounts, so it's like the person's still alive and people freak out. So to me, I was taking that a step further and saying, purposefully, it's like you have Shrine while you're alive, you fill it with stuff, and then when you pass away, the essence of you is turned into a bot of some kind to keep your memory alive, so people can still interact with you in your shrine. And so it was like a Facebook of the dead kind of account system, and so that sort of rears its head again in this conversation. So you can go visit people you knew, worked with, and then of course it becomes like this giant repository of knowledge and other stuff, right? Because Alexandria shrine, nothing is wasted, right? Such a senseless waste of human life will not happen ever again, because we will enshrine you, and you'll have like editors and curators. All right, so last one before we run off into the sunset. Glory. Oh dear, I think these glory stain. We have two stains. I'm not quite sure.
Oh dear, yeah. How did that happen?
Why? Glory stain survival. I'm glad it wasn't whole, because I had this sneaking suspicion that I had whole as a word.
Oh, well done.
Probably stopped myself, because I thought those two could end up together.
Yep.
Glory stain survival. A glory stain. I guess that's the tattoo. Could be like a glory stain to commemorate something. And if you have it, well, it could be like you got your pandemic. I survived and I've been vaccinated or something. The tattoo that says, "This is my glory stain. We came, we conquered, we fought." What else is a glory stain? Memories, I guess. Memories of a tough time that made you what you are is a glory stain. So we have, I like that idea that memories are a glory stain. I don't know what it means yet, but something tells me it's got to be good.
No, it's an interesting phrase. Glory stain. To be stained with glory.
Something that should be good
something that should be good but isn't. Either in retrospect or even at the time people realized it wasn't great.
Isn't that kind of just like life, where you participated in something that maybe at the time you were proud of, and then later, or future generations or something, come to look upon that thing as terrible, and you were a part of that. And I guess,
but what if that happens even quicker now? That sort of, thanks to the media, thanks to everything else, thanks to people being ironic and everything else, what if almost when medals are being handed out, they're ironic medals now? We're already doubting whether this was a good thing to do. Oh, yes, well done. You've successfully killed 18 civilians today. As revealed in live news feeds. That thing you bombed was a hospital.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking it didn't, it doesn't even need to be as dramatic as that. It's that, I mean, quite literally, I've looked at films that I once loved, or even things I've worked on, and realized how off note they are today. Like the ideas in them are really off color, given where we are with gender relations and this sort of thing. And you kind of look back and cringe. Part of you remembers it in a positive way, and you kind of want to return there. This is like the weaponized nostalgia, but you can't, because it's toxic nowadays, and people will look at that and say, "That's awful." The way you depicted women or these peoples or something in this entertainment. You say, how can you thought that was entertainment, right? It's so sick. There's a line. I mean, here's a perfect example. So Woody Allen, right? He's in the press for all the wrong reasons, and now you probably, just like Michael Jackson, you have to reevaluate all of Woody Allen's humor and past work and whatnot because of what may or may not be the case. And there was a film he did long ago called "Everything You Want to Know About Sex, But We're Afraid to Ask."
We're afraid to ask, yeah.
And there's a scene in that film which I really love, where I think this father and his father and mother and father are going over to their, I think it's their daughter's in-law. So the daughter's gonna get married or something. So they go to the other family's house for dinner, and they're all having dinner. And he has to go to the restroom. He goes, and he sees an open closet or bedroom, and where all the wives' clothes are of the other wife, and he starts trying them on because he's got a kind of penchant for that sort of thing. So he's trying on this and that, and he's got himself in a dress and a handbag, and somehow he gets locked out of the building or something. And his handbag gets stolen, and all these neighbors are coming going, "Oh my goodness, are you all right?" And he's trying to cover his mustache and say, "Oh no, I don't, it's fine, don't worry about this," because he doesn't want to be discovered. And of course he is. And then, it's in front of the new in-laws, and he's wearing the wives' clothes and all this kind of stuff, and everyone's like, it's a big scene. So later it's all calmed down, and he's sort of in his bedroom, and his daughter is there with him trying to kind of work through this and process it and console him. And she says, "Dad, why didn't you tell us you were sick and perverted? We would have understood." And that to me is a sort of classic, kind of Woody Allen line. But of course, Woody Allen very well may be himself sick and perverted. So now we can't enjoy these things, or can we, right? Can you listen to Michael Jackson music and not think of, children dancing around with him and
Never Neverland.
Never Neverland. So toxic memories, right? Glory stains, things that we once really enjoyed and got us through tough times and whatnot, that now we look at and go, "Oh my God, what were we thinking? Who were we? We were monsters then."
Yep.
Yeah. We are a product of our own time.
Unthinking monsters, that was us.
Yeah. We are a product of our times. I have to keep reminding people of this when they, like the younger generation, "How could you? What were you thinking? Monsters, all of you." It's like, well, we are a product of our times, and we have to also change with the times. But I guess most of us reach a point in our lives where we don't want to change anymore, and we get all stubborn, and that's when it's time to pass on, to move on. Survival. So survival is about culling the glory-stained elderly class that just can't get past their sick and perverted ideas, principles, and memories, and things like that. Yes. Actually, this is, glory hole, no, but memory hole is a thing. And so over time, we can sign things in the memory hole on purpose. And maybe that's what the Forgettance Party is. It's like, open up the memory hole. We're now putting this in there. Never to be seen or spoken about again. This movie by Woody Allen, while I enjoyed it in my youth, I am now consigning it to the memory hole where, he who shall not be named. This will not be spoken of again. Isn't this what conservatives are always calling cancel culture?
Yes. Yes, exactly.
So it's cancel culture. Yes. We must not. No, don't speak. It must not be spoken of. Well, I hope we remember this tomorrow. Thank you, Toby. That was an hour well spent. And we now have we have this recording for all posterity. We can return in the future to our altered states, memory hole shrine.
There's some really interesting stuff here.
And cursed tattoos. Take care.
The future's looking great. Looking really great.
All right. Well, my friend, that was fun.
Thank you.
I
Thank you.
appreciate you
Yeah.
for
Yes, it was. Thank you very
joining
much.
me in this morning
My pleasure. That was a good one.
palate cleanser. I love the Prada ad though. That's oh
Yes.
yeah. You know what? There's another thing I should say about this before
Mm.
we go, which is that I know what it makes me think of too, is that here we are in a pandemic where most of the people are struggling because most of the people in the world are uh, in a kind of a vice hold of kind of poverty and other things they can't get
Mm-hmm.
out of. And there is a smaller percentage of people that are very wealthy. And apparently, this is their best lives. They're living their best lives in the pandemic because it doesn't affect them. They can jet off to wherever they want. They can live in bunkers that are staffed by, the hand-picked people that have to be tested and vaccinated on a regular basis. And they can just go about their life because they live off the grid. They don't live in the same world as we do. And I saw a Bloomberg article, which I'll have to pull out for this, which showed this man smiling next to this huge bank of solar panels. And it said, wealthy homeowners go off the grid. And I thought that that was so wonderfully cynical because it's written as a kind of good thing showing, hey, look, all this technology and people going off the grid. But really, it was just accentuating the fact that if you're very wealthy, you don't put your children in the same schools as everyone else. You don't even use the same utilities as everyone else. You're not drinking the same water. You're not using the same power. Everything that you have, you've recreated as if you were, I guess, your own little banana republic. So why did I think of this when I saw this image is because when people were asking themselves, what is going on with this crazy Wall Street market? The US market was doing so well during the pandemic, and people had all of these different explanations. And my explanation was, after reading various things and talking to people, was, well, think about who owns the stock market. If you look at the number of households and what they own of the stock market, you discover that it's something like 7 or 8% of US households own 80% of the market.
Good
So
Lord.
if you look at it that way, then the market basically represents what 7% of the population thinks about life and what's happening and the valuation of things, right? So you
Yep.
shouldn't ask yourself, what the general public would do when you're making these investment decisions. You just ask yourself, what would the 7% do? And that then suddenly made sense to me why luxury brands were doing so well during the pandemic, because if you're in the 7% and you've got all this wealth and it's just getting wealthier, you're going to spend it on luxury brands, right? So it's things like this is sort of thinking, what would the 7% do, right? So just as religious people say, well, what would Jesus do in this situation? When it comes to investing, you just say, well, what would the 7% do, right? What would they put value on? What would they need? What would they, expect to appreciate in value? And just think like they do, and then you can kind of guess, a little bit better where the market might be going. So they're basically saying, we think that all cloud services and stuff like this are the future. And they're not saying that because they themselves are, cloud workers that, are going to live this way. It's because they themselves live like this all the time. And they just think, oh, we're going to make all our employees do this too. So they're driving the decision. They make those investments. They say, okay, cloud services, they're going to be ballistic. So, it's like, Ahmed Akbar, make it so. I think make it so. So that is my crash course on what is the market doing. Just ask yourself, what would the 7% do in this situation?
It's very smart.
So
Okay.
the Prada kind of phony ad to me is a bit like, it's sort of luxury pandemic wear. It's in a dire circumstance like this, it's not to just think about disaster capitalism, it's to think about disaster branding. Because when we
All
have
right, but see, look, if we keep talking, yeah.
well, because when we have a disaster like this, the 7% are going to do even better, and that's what I'm
Well,
saying.
But can't it be disaster tourism?
Oh, yes, of course.
That's what this is about. And unfortunately, this is a thing we should have saved for our next thing. But
Yeah.
it's about you can now wander around in the midst of the latest Ebola thing. You can go there on holiday.
Oh, yeah. And you can see
You
pain
can
and
see all
suffering
the
up
awfulness,
close.
but you're fine.
Yeah. Disaster
That's
tourism.
okay because you're putting money into the local economy, so you're helping them.
You come with vaccines. You're like, hey, everybody, I bring gifts from
Yeah.
from my world. Yeah. That's horrible. God. All right. We will say that for the next time, because I think disaster tourism deserves a closer look.
Its own thing. Yes, it does.
Its own thing.
Sadly, it does.
And in fact, that's what we did today. A kind of a little disaster tourism of ideas across
We did.
a panoply of bad ideas in a good way. All right.
Yes.
Take care, my friend. Until the next time.
Thank you. You take care too, and I'll see you next week.
All right.